Today I'd like to continue our journey through the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, that section called the Sermon on the Mount, and talk about divorce. The teaching that Jesus gives about divorce is very different than the teaching of Moses about divorce. And so people ask, well, why does Jesus take this approach? Is it to contrast a bit with Moses and Moses' teaching? What exactly is Jesus getting at here? According to the Mosaic tradition, it was rather a simple matter to divorce. You would just say to your wife, I'm divorcing you, give her a bill of divorce. And that was pretty much it. There wasn't a big process to go through. There weren't lawyers involved, there weren't judges involved. It was really interpersonal between the husband and the wife. The problem, of course, with it is the rights of the wife not being too well protected. I can just imagine being in a relationship where at any point, the husband could give you a bill of divorce. I mean, that doesn't really lead to much stability. So, really, weaknesses in that system, certainly. Jesus takes a different approach to his marriage. He says that unless the marriage is unlawful, and that word unlawful in Greek is porneia, that Matthew uses, and that is open to interpretation. Unless the marriage is unlawful, there really should be no basis for divorce at all. This is rather a remarkable teaching on the part of Jesus with regard to, a really huge change in how a Jewish person would approach marriage in terms of the past and the tradition. So, of course, the discussion that is had with this is, well, the one exception here is porneia. Well, what exactly does that mean? And scholars have argued back and forth different interpretations of it. Some feel it's sexual misconduct in a marriage. Some feel it's marriage to a close kin, which is not a good thing. That was forbidden by Jewish law in Leviticus 18:6 to 18. If someone was too closely related to you, it was observed that it could be harmful in terms of children and what could happen. So, and also family structure. If you're marrying somebody who's a close part of the family, this can lead to all sorts of problems and situations within the family, obviously. Literally, porneia means prostitution. That's the literal interpretation of it. It could also refer to a betrothed woman having premarital intercourse with another man. So again, this would be discovered. She was betrothed, but she had intercourse with another man. I'm going to give her this bill of divorce. Basically, what this porneia would relate to is the person being in some way sexually unfaithful to their partner. Now, interesting, of course, that the husband can give it to the wife, this bill of divorce, but not the wife to the husband for his sexual improprieties. I mean, again, it doesn't seem to be fair in any way, shape, or form. So Jesus is saying, no, there's going to be no divorce, except in the situation of porneia. And again, this has, of course, been the teaching of the church, no divorce. There can be what we call a dissolution of the marriage, the process of annulment. But that is saying basically there never was a true marriage in the first place. True consent was not given. But Jesus says, well, if the union is a true union, it's a union that God has made. God has joined these two together. So it's not up to us to separate that true union, except in the case of porneia. Jesus mentions here. And why would that be true? Well, what that could lead to is adultery. You have this divorce type of situation where, again, she remarries, and, to another person, has intercourse with that person, but yet she's really married to another, and so it gets into the whole area of adultery. Whoever marries a divorced woman would be committing adultery, technically, because, she's divorced, she's already, been married, and now you're taking away from her partner. You can see the confusion that can result in terms of relationships. And that is certainly what Jesus is pointing us towards. But of course, in this section of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is giving us ideals. He's giving us goals, things we should strive for. And everyone would say, I think universally, that marriage should be forever. When we marry somebody, we don't usually marry them and say, well, this is only going to last for a year. I'll enter into it for a little while. I'll try it out. I'll see what happens. No, it's a commitment we make to that person. We love that person. We want to be with them forever. We want to build family with them. We want to grow in love with them. All of this is really the ideals with regard to marriage. And of course, this teaching raises a lot of questions in terms of the church today, in terms of the lived reality of people today. Divorce seems more accepted in our culture, although when you look back to ancient culture, it seems that divorce was a reality as well, so how much more it is today than was then, you can go back and forth with different analysis of it, but certainly the reality of divorce seems to be, historically anyway, that it was really part of the life of people, and there were difficulties involved in relationships. In terms of today, what we kind of picture is the sense that we certainly hold out marriage, permanent union, as a very important aspect of our theology of marriage. We also are faced with the reality that, unfortunately, and sadly, some marriages do fail, and for a variety of reasons. Of course, we have the whole process of annulment to deal with that, because maybe there was, an issue in terms of the maturity of the person, the lack of consent, various aspects of the relationship, and that can be worked out in terms of the process of annulment. But then there are those who, just don't want to bother with the idea of going through an annulment. It's a long process. It involves getting testimony. Some people complain about the financial aspect of it. It costs so much money. But again, there are plans that I've heard of some people who pay like $5 a month or just a very minimal amount because they can't afford it. So the church does work that out, and in some dioceses even, and Pope Francis has encouraged this, that this whole process should really be free. You shouldn't put a financial burden on people who already are struggling with the financial impact of a divorce in civil society, and lawyers' fees and child support payments and all of this stuff that goes back and forth. So it can be, an extra added stress that could discourage someone who might have legitimate reasons to get an annulment from pursuing an annulment. So the Pope says, really try to make this easier for people, freer for people, no financial burden for them, and make it a more open process for them. And certainly that's a good thing. But for those who, for whatever reason, don't want to go through that process, but yet they are faithful to their church, they're faithful to Christ, they love their religion, they have remarried, they have now a beautiful family with their new spouse, things seem to be working fine, they want to participate in their church community. Pope says, well, in those situations we accompany them. Not that we change our teaching about the permanency of marriage and the indissolubility of marriage. No, we're not trying to change any teaching with regard to that, because, again, it's based on the words of Jesus, so we're not going to change it. but we're going to be understanding of where that person, where that couple, where this new relationship is at. We're going to try to support them, accompany them on the journey, and share faith with them, share a community with them, share love with them. So the teaching of Jesus about divorce, certainly it's a new teaching in terms of the Jewish tradition. It's a teaching that is a very important teaching in our church. And it's a teaching that we strive for. We want marriages to last forever. But it's also one that we try to have a pastoral understanding and work with people in the best situation possible for them so that they can participate in a life of faith, in a life of grace, and in a life of love.